In yet another dramatic escalation of tensions between India and Canada, India has now expelled 6 Canadian diplomats from India, including the acting High Commissioner Stuart Ross-Wheeler.
Right, and earlier in the day, it had recalled its High Commissioner and key diplomats from Canada. This after they were named as persons of interest in the killing of Sikh separatist leader Hardeep Singh Nijjar. He was gunned down by masked men outside a Gurdwara in British Columbia in June 2023.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau accused Indian diplomats of engaging in activities that he said posed a significant threat to public safety.
I believe India has made a monumental mistake in choosing to use their diplomats and organized crime to attack Canadians, to come and make Canadians feel unsafe here at home, and even more so, to create acts of violence and even homicide. This is unacceptable.
Trudeau's statement came after the Canadian police said on Monday that it has significant amount of information on criminal activity being orchestrated by agents of the Indian government. In an official response, India called the allegations preposterous and ascribed them to the political agenda of Trudeau's government. New Delhi highlighted that Ottawa has failed to provide any evidence since making allegations against Indian officials with regards to the murder of Nijjar more than a year ago. This despite multiple requests. Further, it listed multiple instances since 2018 as evidence of Trudeau's hostility towards India.
Earlier, India's foreign ministry summoned Canada's top diplomat. He was told that in the atmosphere of extremism and violence prevailing in Canada, the Trudeau government's actions endangered the safety of India's diplomats. The decision to recall its top diplomat and other targeted officials was also communicated. All right, to discuss this further, we are now being joined by Terry Milewski, who is a journalist and also the author of Blood for Blood, 50 Years of the Global Khalistan Project. Mr. Milewski, thank you so much for joining us. Now, of course, there has been no mention till now about the Khalistani elements, which still receive and have a safe haven very much there in Canada. And also at this point, when Trudeau says that, Indian diplomats are posing a threat to public safety, there is no mention of the kind of threat which is there to Hindus and Indian nationals in Canada, owing to the Khalistani elements, which still have a safe haven there. I just wanted to understand your assessment on this to begin with.
Well, I noticed the same absence of comment. The RCMP and tonight the Prime Minister have completely flipped the script, the traditional script on who we should see as the bad guy. Traditionally, we've been instructed to consider that the Khalistanis are the ones using violence and that we must go after them and try to stop them. And now we are being told that no, it's the Indian government that is the problem. They're the ones using violence against these poor, defenseless, persecuted Khalistanis. I exaggerate, but only a little. You noticed, and you were correct, that we didn't talk about the savage history of violence on the part of the Khalistanis in Canada and, of course, beyond. Need I even mention the Air India bombing of 1985? 231 completely innocent civilians blown out of the sky for nothing. What about the relentless beatings of their critics, beating of Balraj Diol, the beating of Ujjal Dosanjh, and on, the death threats? I've had my share, others have had it far worse. And these threats continue on the part of the Khalistani element against those who would criticize them, particularly for their violence. So this presents us a very strange picture. And it suggests to me that what's happened is that the Liberal government of Justin Trudeau has been spun. They have been persuaded by skilled lobbyists, and they are they're very well skilled, for the Khalistan movement in Canada,
yes,
the Sikh organization and others. They have been persuaded to believe that they don't know about the 20,000 people who died in the desperately violent insurgency in Punjab in the 1980s and early 90s. They don't know the history. They have been persuaded that the problem here is the Indian government. They're the bad guys. And that's something new.
Mr. Milewski, just now shifting focus to the internal politics.
Absolutely. And now that you said that, I would also like your assessment on this. Now, reports suggest that over 25 Liberal MPs, they signed a document recently calling for Trudeau's ouster. And not even the polls, the Canadian polls. Now, this is a report by CBC. These polls, they don't really show a lot of support for Trudeau. They show Liberals getting 22% majority there in their opinion polls. What is your assessment? Is this the last kind of ditch effort by Trudeau to garner support from specific sections in Canada to retain power?
I wish he had such a sophisticated plan. I don't think he has any plan at all. I don't think he has any grand design to alter the arc of Canadian politics. I don't think it can be altered. I think he is toast in Canada. That is to say that there will be an election due next year. I don't think he can survive it. I think he's finished. And that's the traditional, your time is up after a certain period of time, usually about 9 years for some reason. Harper, Chrétien, these prime ministers all seem to last less than a decade before maybe you just get tired of them and want something new. And that's what is happening to Trudeau. I don't expect him Prime Minister when this fracas between India and Canada is finally resolved, if it ever is. I think Trudeau is not doing this because he thinks it will politically and that he'll somehow survive. Canadians barely follow these matters. Canadians were polled recently about the worst terrorist incident in Canadian history, the Air India bombing of 1985. They didn't know what it was. They didn't know what the pollsters were talking about. That's how much interest Canadians have traditionally taken in what they see as somebody else's problem. It's an Indian problem. It's a problem for the other side of the world, not our affair. And I don't expect that to change. I don't think Trudeau believes that he is going to flip, as I say. I think that he probably knows that he's toast and he wants to go out in a blaze of glory as standing for the integrity of Canadian sovereignty, defying any foreign power that wants to come here, take Canadian law, and carry out murders and assassinations in Canada on Canadian soil.
Mr. Milewski,
he sees that as a fine point of principle, and he's going to stand on it.
I hear your point. Mr. Milewski, with the respective high commissioners returning to their respective countries soon now, where do you see the India-Canada ties heading from here? Is this rock bottom? Does it go further from here?
Well, I think it may even get worse. I said before that how can it get worse? And then it did get worse. It's probably going to get worse still before it gets better. But there are reasons to think that there's going to be an end to it. What I mean is about two trials, two criminal trials. The first is that of Nikhil Gupta, who's been extradited from Czechoslovakia, now sits in an American jail, awaiting trial on the FBI, the Department of Justice in the United States, brought a lengthy indictment of which you've heard against Gupta as being the alleged handler on behalf of certain high officials of the intelligence services in India, and engineered a plot to hire gangsters to go out and kill Gopal Singh Noon of Sikhs for Justice, and also Hardeep Singh Nijjar in Canada, as he was assassinated in September of last year. So that trial will tell us whether indeed it was real. That's the trial's job, sort out facts from spin. And we may find out that it was all true, or we may find out that it was all an illusion. Then the other trial that we have to watch is that of the four goons who were hired to kill Nijjar. Were they paid by somebody like Nikhil Gupta? Were they paid by someone acting on behalf of the Indian government? Remember that there are some differences between the American and Canadian approach. The Americans more subtle, more clever, I would argue, because they didn't directly point the finger at the Indian government. You did this murder. They said, well, he was an employee of the Indian government. not the Indian government to say. Whereas Trudeau got up and made a fine speech and accused the Indian government of the whole thing. So the Americans have left the Indians some wiggle room. There's room, I think, for a creative settlement, a quiet deal between the Americans and the Canadians and the Indians. Say, look, it's been a nasty business. Everybody did their share of stupid things. And as long as we have some accountability for the murder of Nijjar, and India promises to play nice and not do anything like that again, and we'll sweep it under the rug.
Well, and all this, of course, as the Indian government still awaits evidence, which it still continues to suggest that there is not a shred of evidence which has been provided by the Canadian authorities. Yet, of course, those are differing accounts. Those are differing accounts from the two countries. Of course, we'll need to wait and watch what comes next. Thank you so much for joining us. That was Terry Milewski joining us